What we do is we basically bring the library out to children.
It actually started when the founder of the Salvation Army saw people living on the street, children forced to work in factories.
This year, we're going to honor the legacy of Dr. James Farmer with a scholarship.
Setting up these thought leadership councils, it's the best way to effectively engage our members.
Our teachers, I would put their educational qualifications and their training up against anybody.
Hello and welcome to Cox Connections. I'm your host, Catherine Falk, market leader for Northern Virginia. Thank you for joining us today. Fairfax County Public Schools have continually been among the top public school systems in the country, but there's still a need to help students from low-income regions break the cycle of poverty. Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Karen Garza, is here to talk about an exciting program aimed at doing just that. Dr. Garza, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Now, you're in your third year at Fairfax County Public Schools as the superintendent. Tell us about your background and how things are going.
My background, I started my career as a kindergarten teacher and have spent almost 30 years in education and have had a variety of different opportunities and experiences, and so delighted to be a part of Fairfax County Public Schools and this entire community. We're very excited to be here. Lots of great things that are going on in our schools and a lot to be proud of.
And it's a big school system.
Very large school system. We're continuing to grow. We're now the 10th largest school system in the United States, serving about 187,000 students on an annual basis. Very fast growing. But I will tell you, in all of our 197 schools, there's just such great things going on, and we're very, very pleased and proud of our schools.
Now, there's a perception out there that Fairfax County is really full of wealth, and of course that's true in many respects, but there are children in need in our public schools, and I know you've been working hard on a new program to address and help those children. So tell us about that. What is Genesys Works?
You know, we're very proud of the fact that every year we graduate around 12,000 students that will go on, and many of them go on to four-year universities. And so we do that really well. But we recognize that as our population continues to change in Fairfax County, for many people they might not be aware, but we have 54,000 students in our system that live in poverty, and that number is growing. And so we recognize that in order to serve all children equally well, that we know that we have to do different things and provide varied options in terms of programs and services. And so when we think about the portrait of a graduate and that being a reality for every student with the 21st century skills that we know are necessary for success in this rapidly changing world, that looks different for different students. And so Genesys Works was a nonprofit organization that I was familiar with, having been in Houston ISD. And so I reached out to him in December, and we began that process of cajoling and recruiting them to our community. And I'm so delighted and pleased that their board has unanimously agreed to expand in the fifth major marketplace here in the Washington region in Fairfax County. So starting next year, we'll have Genesys Works fully embedded in the system and starting to have impact on children. And
this is the first location in the East that they're choosing, right?
That is correct. They're in 4 major metropolitan areas right now. And this will be the 5th. They start off in Houston, Minneapolis, St. Paul area, the Bay Area, Chicago, and then now here in our area.
And it's very exciting. It's a nonprofit, but what is their goal?
The goal is to identify the students that would graduate from high school, but they have no plans to go to college, and typically would graduate. They would go on, they're kind of that quiet middle student that would graduate but would typically go right back into the workforce in a skills kind of a minimum wage job and have difficulty supporting a family. The goal with this program is that with the right conditions, the right kind of training and support, is to really change the perspectives and the lifelong goals of these children and these students. They have a wonderful and successful track record of identifying these students, providing them great training in the summer around not only IT, typically IT, how to work on computers, deployment, really some meaningful skills in working with technology, but also those soft skills about how do you handle yourself in the workplace for success. Then they place students in meaningful paid internships in the senior year of high school. So they will dress appropriately. They're trained and supported about how to manage themselves successfully in the workplace, and then they start to see themselves as being successful in a professional environment, and it completely changes their life direction. And so Genesys Works also starts to work with the children and the students to prepare for college, and so their track record is really exceptional. They have many, many stories of students who today are business professionals, degreed business professionals. In many cases, they've gone right back to the same organization they interned in. So there's great success stories that we can tell about, but within a very short amount of time, we'll have our own success stories to talk about right here in Fairfax County.
And you mentioned it starts in the summer. It's actually a 14-month intensive program, right? So it's not like a summer internship. This is really a long year-plus commitment that businesses and students are making, right?
Yes, you really have to put aside your maybe traditional notions around what internships are like. This is very, very different. We would identify the students in their second semester of their junior year. We would work with those students throughout the summer. Genesys Works has a curriculum. They have to go through 8 weeks of intensive training throughout the summer. Then they're put into paid, meaningful internships. Essentially, they do part-time work for that particular business or industry. They contract with Genesys Works. They pay for services that they would have to pay for anyway, typically at a lower rate than they would have to pay in the traditional marketplace. And so it provides meaningful value back to the company, at the same time provides students with a real job, professional in a professional workplace. So it's not the traditional internship, well, I have to figure out what we're going to do with the intern today. This is students really providing meaningful work and value for the company. And Genesys Works has had long-standing relationships with a multitude of business and industry throughout the country. So their track record with regard to establishing those relationships with businesses and then maintaining those over time. Oftentimes, businesses that are interested in partnering may start with a handful of interns, and then it will often grow beyond that.
And so it's really like a year-long apprenticeship for the student, because
Yes, it
they
is.
don't work just the summer, they actually work through the year, their senior year, right?
They work through their entire senior year.
Part-time.
Part-time.
And
They go to
and
school half a day, then they go to their jobs the other portion of the day.
And the program also makes sure that there's transportation and that all of the things are taken care of to make sure that this child succeeds, right?
Absolutely. And Genesys Works takes responsibility for the student success. So the business contracts with Genesys Works. And so there's one supervisor for every 20 students. So there's a lot of on-the-ground support. So, if there are any potential issues, they're able to respond to them very quickly and address them. I think that's part of the reason there's been tremendous success with the program.
And how many students are we talking about?
Well, we'd like to start, they have scaled this up before, and so we're following their model for, starting the program and building it. We'll start with around 35 students, potentially. We're working with 6 or 7 identified high schools right now, beginning to train them, prepare them for next year and identifying students, just the right students to be in the program. And then we'll scale up over the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, hopefully up to probably about 400 students. I'd love to have 400 students in the program. But it depends upon, obviously, an interested business community that's willing to offer these opportunities for our students.
So we need the business community to
Yes.
step up and sponsor these students and take on these future wonderful performers.
There are 2 things that we need from the business community. First of all, I have to acknowledge our foundation, FCPS's foundation, led by Jerry Gordon and a wonderful board who've decided to make this one of the projects that they're going to help get established. Genesys Works here in our community. So I'm very excited about that. Also, I'm very grateful to the Fairfax Chamber and Jim Corcoran, because they really helped us recruit and convince Genesys Works that we were the right community to now expand in this area. And so that was very helpful. But yes, moving forward, we'll need to continue to have the business community behind the successful initiation of this great organization right here in our community, both with providing those meaningful opportunities for students in their organizations and in their workplace, providing meaningful service and value to them. At the same time, there will be a need for startup monies for Genesys Works. They're coming with a $500,000 grant that they received, but they will need additional revenue to get started. The nice thing also about Genesys Works is within 3 years, they're almost completely self-sustaining as a nonprofit, which is very unusual. There will be some additional fundraising throughout the years, but by the third or fourth year, they're about 75 to 80% self-sustaining, which I think is a great business model, and certainly something I think that sets them apart from many of the other nonprofits.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very exciting initiative, and I think our viewers can learn more at fcpsfoundation.org, and
Yes.
We hope that businesses will go there to learn more.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
Hope
for
so, too.
joining us, Dr. Garza, and good luck with that.
Thank you.
And stay tuned. We have more Cox Connections after the break.